the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. We have a full board here this evening. Thank you so much. We were properly noticed for the meeting. Thank you, Kate and Conrad. And we're going to lead off this evening with kind of a new category. Under facilities and potential referendum report, we have two gentlemen with us this evening from our architectural firm. While I know they'd love to be here for the duration of the meeting, because it's going to be really exciting, we have you scheduled first, so you can leave at your leisure. With me this evening is Mr. Charlie Robertson and Mr. Andy Lyons from EUA.
Thank you, Board President Kim. Appreciate all of you having us tonight. As Kim said, I'm Charlie Robertson. I'm with EUA. I'm a project manager. We're an architectural engineering firm.
And I am Andy Lyons. I do engagement and communications work for EUA. My job is to ensure that the community has a voice in the planning process as we move forward. I'm going to fade into the background here and hand things over to Charlie. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So we'll do a few introductions here about who EUA is and then what is a facility study. We're a firm of north of 250 employees. We've been in business for over 100 years. We serve 7 major market sectors, learning environments being one of them. We have in the learning environment studio, we have over 40 people working on these projects day in, day out. We have been for decades, and some other statistics there for your interest. And you know what, we've been working on this campus for a long, long time, projects dating back to 1999. I can't personally take credit for any of these, but I have a team behind me that has done a lot of really good work here. However, here is the team. Andy and I are obviously two faces, and over the coming months, you may see a few other faces appear in front of this board, again, in the next 6 months or so. Just to give you a quick snapshot, here's just a little bit of our portfolio of folks that we are working with or have worked with. So what is a facility study, and so what are we doing? There was an effort in 2016, a pretty robust effort that did a similar facility study. In fact, we did it. And then there was also an building exterior assessment done at that time. And then also in 2020, there was a technology, network, and security wireless low voltage system analysis done in 2020. And so we're taking all that information and folding it into this current year, what we're calling 2024 facility study. And we'll be supplementing the information that we find in this season currently with all of the information done in 2016 and 2020. And I'll be going through tonight what you can expect to see from us at the December board meeting concerning the facility study. So to be clear, we're sharing what is our facility study and what you will be seeing. This is not a facility study about Arrowhead yet. We're currently in progress, so this is kind of a preview of what you can expect to see come December. And so to date, we've spent a lot of time, certainly our team and absolutely district staff have spent a lot of time working with us. 3 main components of this facility study include a building conditions assessment, looking at the physical elements of the building. And a second major component is the educational adequacy assessment, which is really a study, an assessment of how well the physical spaces support the curricular goals. And then we also do a capacity and utilization analysis. And there on the screen, I just have a few statistics I mined for in the last couple of weeks to see how much time we've spent. Certainly some district members here tonight have spent countless hours with us in full day meetings and meeting with program leaders and teacher leaders, and we've gotten a lot of really robust and solid information. So we're going to be diving into the first of 3 components, which is the building conditions assessment. And here on the screen is our methodology for that. We certainly look at what we did in 2016 and previous facility studies done by other folks. We interview district staff to understand, get a good idea of what's going on, what are the concerns, what are the pain points. We walk through every space of every building we walk around the site. That's a non-invasive. What that means is we're not popping these ceiling tiles up and looking above ceiling, but we're walking through every space. We're taking photographs of conditions as we see them. And then we ultimately document and score the conditions that we're observing. This is what you can expect to see in December. We have a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being new, 1 being critical, and then we have a not applicable. 5 is something that something's brand new, great condition, as you can see there. Do not necessarily see a need for replacement, all the way down to 1, something that is in critical condition. If we walk into a space, not that we have here, or we see an active leak from the roof, to us that would be something critical. You need to patch the roof and stop the leak, right? And then everything in between. Typically, we like to see anything in that. A 3 is fair, as you can see there. That's something that's just functional. It may have been there for 30 years. The brick walls around this building, for example, are 3s, borderline 4s. They've been there for a long time. They look great. They're not going anywhere, and they don't need to be replaced in the next 10 years, right? So, 3 to 5 is generally where we want to be. So, getting into the detail here, as we do our conditions assessment, we look at, I think we have 10 categories on the screen there at quick count, it might be 11. And we dive into each category has even a subcategory of details of things that we're assessing. So everything on this list is getting looked at by our team. And ultimately it's aggregated and summarized here for each building or area of focus per category. So you can imagine there on the top where it says building name, it might say South Campus, it might say North Campus in the second column, it might say site, grounds, and ancillary buildings, and then the maintenance shop at the last column. That's kind of how we're thinking it's going to turn out. And then you can see, for example, the structural system category or the roofing to see how the roofing compares on all 4 of those columns. And again, see, this is an example from, these are just random numbers. These do not equate to your facilities at all. But again, just to give you an idea of what you could expect to see in December. Next, the second major element of a facility study, like I said, is the educational adequacy assessment. Less about the physical aspects of the building, which again are, carpet is worn, replace carpet, ceiling tiles are falling out of the ceiling, replace ceiling tiles. This is about how well the physical spaces support your curricular criteria or goals. And again, we met with all of the teacher program leads, I think 21 folks we met with, or 20 folks that we met with over the course of 2 days. It was amazing because we had a half hour with each of them and we grilled them with questions, and they told us kind of the things that they're looking forward to, that they're excited about, what they need to teach, how their spaces are serving their pedagogies and curricular goals. And we got all of that information down, and then we went through a floor plan to analyze those rooms. We gathered data, and similar to the conditions assessment, we provide scores as to how well those spaces support their curriculum. And again, very similar scale here, but the criteria is a little bit different. So 5, again, is excellent. These spaces absolutely and perfectly support their curricular aspirations as well as what they are excited about for years to come, right? These are spaces that really offer a lot of flexibility and comfortable and motivating spaces for students, all the way down to 1 and not applicable. I am guilty of saying EAA. I understand this industry. There's a lot of acronyms, so here's one more for you. I say EAA a lot. It stands for Educational Adequacy Assessment. So if I say that, that's what I'm talking about. Again, like the conditions assessment, here's a lot more detail. This is an example project. This is not your project. 8 different categories. In each category, we're diving into different levels of detail. And ultimately, again, that's aggregated into a similar summary chart. So you can see at a quick glance, hey, South Campus's breakout and collaboration areas, this is the score that they get. And here's how it compares to North, as an example. So the final element of the facility study, we've talked about the conditions, we've talked about spatial adequacy, and the final element is capacity and utilization. So the methodology for this is a little bit more simple than the first 2. We just need to get data from Adam and his team. We asked for the enrollment information. We already have, since we've done so much work on this district, we already have the square footages of, I think, every room on the campus. And then we do a quick analysis, and I'll show you a few examples of that. So here is actually a in-process example of North Campus, where we look at different rooms, the areas, the square footages per student. We look at district target class size. We look at the average class size across the periods, and then we start to look at capacities there. Again, this is an example. It's in process, nothing final yet. And ultimately, I know this floor plan is too small on the screen. The point that I want you to pay attention to is we then do a utilization floor plan showing which spaces, and I'm sorry, how often spaces are being utilized on a per period basis. So perhaps some of those red spaces are being utilized every period of the day, and the staff or teachers don't necessarily have a time for prep. Green is good, blue is, a space that could potentially have more periods being occupied. But again, example, in process, we still have more massaging to do. That's a South Campus floor plan. I can't emphasize that enough. And then ultimately, all three of those things get aggregated and summarized in an overall summary. So if you're the type of person that just give me the bottom line, this is it. And you can see the beginnings of that here on the screen. So south, north, site and athletic buildings, and the maintenance shop. And then we'll have the scores for each, underneath each photo and each area of focus. And then we might even devise a way to give a summary score for all four categories. And that ultimately feeds into a presentation deliverable. It can be printed out in a booklet form. And then even a dashboard where you can start to mine the data. So all of that detail that I showed on the previous slides, you can zero in and start to, well, I wonder why they gave that a 2.8. How did they come up with that? You can drill into that number and really see where that number came from and correlate it to the legend that is also depicted in this final facility study deliverable. So next steps. Here's the master schedule, a lot going on here. We're not going to get into the details here. I actually have a zoom in on the next slide. But across the top of the screen is a calendar from September on the left of 23 to November 24. We have our eyes on a potential referendum in early November 24. Along the left-hand side of the screen, which you can't read, and I apologize for that, are different tasks throughout the process that the blue elements are our team working. Our team includes the district personnel core team, the architect and the construction manager are working together, and those red, and showing up on the screen here is pink, but that's the Arrowhead red. It's hard to tell. Are moments where we start to engage staff, engage you, the board, and even send a community survey next March. But here's the blow up, perhaps a little easier to read. Tonight we're here November 8th, which is at the left-hand side of this chart, where you wanted to present to you exactly what, who UA is, what is a facility study. We are wrapping that up here at the end of November, early December. We'll be coordinating with the construction manager soon on starting to develop a capital maintenance cost idea on this facility study and thinking long range, 10 years. And then again, staff feedback in early December with our core team, and then coming back to you here at December 13th, I believe it is, at the board to actually report out your facility study for Arrowhead Union High School District. And then in January, we'd be coming back again to share that capital maintenance cost presentation. Following this, we will then, once we have that baseline of information that a facility study gives us, as architects and builders, we're used to designing and building things, but before we even start taking pencil to paper in the design, we need to understand what you have and what condition it's in and how well it supports your staff, teachers, and personnel, right? So that's step one. And then step two here is option development, which is pencil to paper and starting to look at what options do we have, what did we learn from the facility study, and how do we move forward. There will be a few community information sessions in late winter, early spring, and then certainly the community survey that we're targeting in March sometime. Yeah, again, late winter, early spring. Thank you very much for your time. I'll open up to any questions you have. I'll invite my colleague back up in case you have any communications and engagement questions for him. But again, thanks for having us tonight.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
One question, and it may lead to others, but I don't want you to spoil the surprise. You don't have to provide the detail, but I'm just curious if any big light bulbs have gone off already from a option development that will improve our overall efficiency of the school.
Thank you for the question, Tim. Yes, we are. One of the best parts about this process is hearing teachers and staff and kind of the district administrators say things, and light bulbs start going off. I don't want to I don't want to start sharing some of those ideas because we don't have all the information yet. It wouldn't be fair to the team. I know our team is very excited about some particular ideas, but we really have to keep our excitement in check and be true analyzers here, and we set our designer cap aside, and we really try to understand the big picture first before but we're really excited about the potential and excited about certainly taking this into option development. It's why architects go to school, right, to design buildings and plan and solve things. And so, yes, we're very excited about that next phase.
Awesome. Looking forward to the surprise.
I have a question, just in terms of kind of a brief overview of what we might anticipate from Andy and his team around community engagement. We're kind of in the process now with some of our team leaders in finance and legislation in trying to get a step ahead of how we want to have the school or through the board engage with the community.
Sure.
We want to eliminate redundancy, but we still want to make sure that we're covering all of our bases on time. So if you might touch on what we can anticipate your firm to deliver to us, it would be helpful.
Absolutely. So let me talk about kind of three big picture things, process related, that occur during the course of the schedule, the timeline that Charlie just outlined. And then we can talk a little bit about how EUA can support that process. And let's work backwards. The big thing that occurs in the spring of 2024, assuming that we're maybe working towards a November 2024 referendum, is a community-wide survey. That is often something that occurs at school districts that are pursuing a referendum. Number of really good firms out there that do that work, but ultimately that community-wide survey provides some very, very valuable data in two regards. One related to the option or options that the community best, that the community prefers the most, and maybe more importantly, the tax tolerance or the dollar amount that the community is able to stomach, to appetite, to satisfy, right? So working backwards from that community's survey process, we'd like to do 1, 2, maybe even more community listening sessions. And that process is really, we're trying to accomplish two different things there. We're trying to impart some information on those attendees. The needs analysis that Charlie just outlined. What are the needs of the district in terms of that educational adequacy assessment, the building conditions, et cetera. The costs of those needs, and also what sort of options might be solutions to addressing those needs. So we want to have a conversation with the community, gather some input from folks, from the attendees about what options they gravitate to most. maybe Charlie and his team develop 4, 5, 6 different options. We don't want to survey all of those different options. You'll get junk data back. So we want to narrow the number of options that ultimately go to survey to maybe 1 or 2. So hopefully that series of informational sessions, community-wide listening sessions, provides us with the ability to kind of narrow in and prep us for survey. And then finally, kind of moving forwards or backwards, these listening sessions that you hold at the 6:30 hour, I believe, represent a really nice opportunity to continue to engage the community around the facilities planning process. So 3 really nice ways to engage the community. Any questions about those kind of process related issues before I talk about how EUA supports the district? Cool. So we're here both from a technical perspective and from a communications and engagement perspective all throughout the process. You don't have a communications staff person per se on your administrative team. We will support that process to the greatest degree possible. We will help write content in collaboration with the communication or with the construction manager, and then allow Conrad and his team to put that content in their own kind of collective voice and your voice as well. So developing informational flyers in preparation for these sessions. Later on in the process, supporting the survey work by ensuring that content, that messaging gets out into the community, into the parent community, and the broader community as well. We need to remember that your parent community probably represents only 25 to 30% or so of your overall population. So we want to ensure that we're broadcasting well beyond your parent population. And the communications team that we've established will put together a plan to ensure that we do exactly that. And then, assuming you all adopt a referendum at some point, obviously contingent on your decision making, we will implement a fairly robust and detailed informational campaign. We're not doing advocacy work, obviously, that is a no-no, and we will not do that. But we want to ensure that the community has all of the information it needs in order to make an informed decision come election day, should you adopt a referendum question for November of 2024. Any questions, concerns?
Do you have any, this might be a little bit out of the norm here, but do you have any thoughts with regards to, we have several feeder schools that are looking to do the same. Any thoughts on, I don't know, anything you'd like to share with regards to that and us moving forward?
Yeah, so great question, great point. Developing and cultivating the relationship with the 7 feeder schools. 7, okay. I was right the first time. To the greatest degree possible is going to be absolutely critical as we move forward collectively. And obviously, they will have some interests of their own, as I understand it, potentially some operating referenda among a couple of the feeder schools for April of 24, and potentially something on the horizon at least one of the feeder schools for November of 2024. So, that is a potential additional tax impact that we are going to have to consider as we, do our option development work. I guess what I would say is let's do our very best to develop and cultivate relationships at the feeder school level and also at the village and municipal level as well. That's very, very important as well.
You guys working with any of the feeder schools on the referendums?
We are not right now.
Anything else from board members?
I'm not a expert by any stretch of the imagination on building grounds or construction or anything. So forgive me if my question is a bit naive, but how much do you interface with the construction management firm, if at all? And does it matter to you which construction firm we might select?
I can take it. You can take it.
I can take it.
Okay.
Because it's something I'm passionate about. You know, we view the we're avid fans of having a construction manager to join the team. We see them once they're on board, and we like to be joined at the hip with them. This process would fail without them in the same way that it would fail without us. And so really it's the three-legged stool, if you will. The administration, you, the board, is one of the legs, or one of the legs, and the CM is the other leg. It's very important that we're joined at the hip, right, for this to be a success. And I think did you have a second part to your question?
No, just that you work with VJS.
Yes, I've worked with VJS. If that's a spoiler, I apologize. And I enjoy working with them. I have a good working relationship, and I think I have 3 active projects right now with them, so that's very exciting. People I know, and very excited about them joining the team.
And Charlie participated in the process with us when we were interviewing.
I had a question. In your timeline, when were you gathering the feedback from the public in the survey? Because I know with some vendors, the survey results are, very projectable and true of what the vote may end up being given scenarios.
Yeah, great point. I don't know if you want to bring that up. Yes. So we would be most likely beginning to develop the survey along with the vendor in late February, March. That survey would most likely hit households immediately after your spring break. That survey window, so to speak, would be open for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. The data would come back to the board, most likely in late May, early June. We've typically used roughly that same timeline in every project that we've been a part of. That provides the board a little bit of additional time in June, July, maybe even August to do that final narrowing, get the additional data from the financial analyst to finalize tax impact numbers. So the board needs to do a little bit of kind of buttoning up of work before potentially authorizing that referendum in August at the latest.
Right. I was just thinking, because when Chris made the point of us being unique where we have the feeder schools, there'll be the April election there where there'll be some referendums on there. So I was just hoping like we would survey them after that election, ideally, if timeline allows, to get more of that accurate read, because maybe one school district, they get hit with referendum, it passes, it's like, oh shoot, that's X dollars on my taxes. Now there's another one coming. So at least we have kind of more of that real life situation of something that passed and how will that make an impact on us passing our referendum.
That's a great point. We'll have to think strategically about that for sure. But typically, we'd be able to accommodate a timeline that has the survey go out in, early to
I think it's April 2 is the election, if I remember right.
Yeah.
A question on the survey, are there enough questions up front before you get into the content and you do the survey to understand the demographics of the survey participant, to see do they have kids coming up, do they have kids currently in school now, are they empty nesters, so that we can get some real good intel as to where each of those kind of 3 large buckets of community sits in regards to the response.
That's a great question. Short answer, yes. Long answer, it depends on the survey provider, but all of the survey providers will include a series of demographic and related questions. A fantastic question that a couple of the survey providers use is, what type of communication vehicle do you prefer to read or consume your district-related information on or from? That allows us to kind of tailor our communications campaign later on, should the board choose to adopt a resolution. So yes, a rich set of data. Couple of different approaches by the different survey providers. One of the survey providers in particular views this very much as a survey to gather information, but also as kind of the communication out to the community as a whole, which is, you know, a valuable approach.
What are your responses usually on these surveys? Are they fairly well received and reported back, or?
Certainly depends on the community. You know, I have done a fair amount of work in the Madison area, the suburban schools around Madison, very high response rate and very positive responses. You know, done some work in a number of other communities, not so great. But I would advise the board, take to heart what you're finding from the community on that survey. That survey tends to be very predictive. It's not a scientific study by any stretch of the imagination. It's an opt-in survey most often, but the tendency is to be very predictive come election day.
So Andy, knowing that the time frame for sending the survey out would be somewhere in the February, March time frame.
After that. Probably April.
The planning would happen in that.
Planning would happen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
The planning portion, just backing off of that, what would you recommend for a time frame for selecting the survey firm?
Oh, yeah.
At what point should we, you know, start pursuing options?
So if you are thinking about a November of 2024 referendum, I would, at the very least, put a call in, and that's something that we can do, to one or both of the survey firms that we work with most often, and just let them know to hold a spot for Arrowhead. November of 24, as you might imagine, is going to be a very yes, there are going to be a lot of districts going in November of 24. So we want to ensure that the survey provider is not overbooked. But you have quite a bit of latitude in, you know, sending the RFP out and hiring the firm, should you choose that process.
Have you guys seen any trends with large elections like that in terms of helping or hurting yes or no's on referendums?
Typically, the presidential cycle, and to a lesser degree the gubernatorial cycle, is the most successful cycle. The April cycles, typically you're seeing a 17, 18, 19% turnout rate, depending on who's on the ballot, if it's a Supreme Court race or not. Oftentimes success rates will drop pretty substantially. And I would say, just personally, you want to go when the most community members have an opportunity to cast a ballot and weigh their feedback, right? They're naturally going to be at the polls, so take the opportunity to ask a question of them when you're going to hear the most from them.
Any further? Well, thank you, Charlie, Andy, thanks for being here, and we really look forward to hearing more on the facility plan in December.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See you next month.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move into the superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Conrad.
And I will turn it over to Adam Kurth, Arrowhead High School principal, for the first part of the superintendent's report.
You getting fired halfway through it.
Yeah, I can put it back.
All right, thanks for giving me a few minutes. I had brought a topic to the attention of Mr. Farner at an ODT meeting and in front of our administrative team that I wanted to bring to the board, and I wanted it to be a public conversation because I think our public needs to hear about a challenge we're facing as a school, and as in doing that, I realized we really only present to the board formally once a year, which is not typical. And so I kind of turned this into a little quarterly presentation. I know that the board also wanted to hear about cell phones on a quarterly basis, so I embedded that in here, and also some celebrations. So hopefully we can kind of do this every few months just to keep the board kind of up to date on everything that's going on with the school. So let's see if I can link this thing work. There we go. Our fall sports were beyond incredibly successful. I just gave you a snapshot of pretty much everything there. And I bring this to our attention because I've said this before, I think we're a little numb at Arrowhead to our success. We started this year, Mr. Mangan started a celebration of our students, walking our students through the hall. We call it the Hawk Walk. They're led by our drum line. It's an awesome piece. I have a video later on to show you. And most schools, if they're lucky, have one of those a year, celebrating a team that's advanced to state. And we are having our 6th at the end of this week. So our football team beat McGuanago, who beat them earlier in the season, the rival. We came back to win the game. And if you didn't see the second game against Hamilton, who beat us last year, it's one of the best high school football games I've seen in a long, long time. Came down to a last-second play, actually. And we ended up losing by 2, but that team did an incredible job throughout the season and growing and getting better. Our soccer team lost in the sectional finals. Our tennis were state champions, and look at how many state comments we have up here. Swim and dive, competing at state. Currently, our boys volleyball team, state runner-up last weekend. Girls volleyball lost in the sectional finals, 1 game off of the state tournament. Golf, we had an individual state qualifier and we had the conference champs. Field hockey, state champions. Girls cross country conference championships, and our boys cross country landed 5th in sectionals. That's a pretty impressive list. So just wanted to share that with the board so you can see the holistic nature of our fall sports and how impressive our kids have been this season. So a couple of pieces of success. The Hawk Walk, as I shared, we have 6 Hawk Walks already this year. That's a really fun piece, and I don't know how to make the. Can I do this? There we go. This is what they do. That's what they walk through. So one of the most animated there was our teacher, Grace Bielski. We celebrated her as well for leading the cheer. Fun for our students. Some of our students and coaches have said that that's the best part of their year so far is being able to be celebrated by their peers. I do want to share that we've been working on this probably since I got here. It's very hard to find kind of a supporter and a face for a program like what we're trying to do. So we often hear that that we celebrate our high successes, our athletics, our top academic students, but we miss a pocket of our students in celebration. So we're working on what's called the Warhawk Rise program in celebration. So the Warhawk Rise is going to celebrate students who from one semester to the next improve their GPA by 1 whole point. Okay? That's a significant turnaround. And to give you the numbers, it's only about 30 to 40 students a semester. And we have 2,000 students here. So we are working with a possible sponsor, and once we are able to kind of lock that in, I'll bring that name and we can share and celebrate. But to host a brunch, invite the parents, invite the families, and celebrate these students for turning their high school academic careers around. It's a really positive thing. It's a very cool event. We have the students acknowledge a staff member who had an impact on them, who maybe supported them in their growth. But we really want to make sure that we are celebrating all different areas of success in our school. And so we're very proud to share that we think we're on our way to hosting our first in April. The board will be invited to that brunch. And so just wanted to kind of get that out in front of you. We think it's a really cool thing that we are working on. And then our food drive is another celebration at Arrowhead. We collected the value of, which means food and donations, 12,201 meals. And we smoked Okan by 4,000. So we're happy about that. But between the two schools, great rivalry. We collected 20,000 meals for our area, which is awesome. Other successes, the Broadway Company, if you didn't see Mean Girls, you should get the recording from our Broadway Company crew. Our kids are just so talented. I went and spoke to them and just said how envious I am of their ability to do something that I literally could never do. So I'm so impressed by how they perform and entertain our community. We have 9 National Merit semifinalists that we celebrated last month. If you look at rate across the state, I'll assure you we are in the top 1% of students testing and students achieving semifinalist status in Wisconsin. We've had numerous writings and students writing an award published, and their pieces have been published nationally in Teen Ink magazine and other resources that our students send in competitive pieces to. If you were able to attend HawkFest, that was a lot of fun. Our community always enjoys that. Just if the board hadn't heard, we were ranked 8th in the state in the U.S. News. We talked about a trend that we wanted to turn around. We don't want to get too excited yet because it's not a turned trend until it's multiple years, but we're pretty excited that we were able to be recognized as the 8th in the state for U.S. News and World Report. And our new scoreboards, if you haven't seen them, they are beautiful. They're going to do a lot of positive things for our school in terms of our messaging and just celebration of our students and accomplishments. And we'll see the first true use with our basketball teams in this coming winter with our indoor scoreboard. So. Challenges, here's our cell phone. It's not really a challenge. It's been going extremely well, and it doesn't seem like it's going extremely well because the whole year last year we had 62 violations reported to our administration. We've had 60 already to date at this point. That's a good thing because it means the board asked us to remove cell phones from the learning environment. Our teachers are doing that. And as our violations increase, that means our students will be recognized and worked with our administrative team, and we can hopefully, our goal is always to change the behavior. And so we feel like we've taken a positive step here. Our staff are doing a really nice job of setting an expectation with students. Students are, for the most part, responsive. Even 60 violations is not a lot when you think about 2,000 students across the board with phones in every hand. So here's the reason that I wanted to actually connect with the board tonight, and I wanted it to be a public conversation, is we are, for some reason, seeing a significant uptick in the vape device use of our students. And I want our community to know this and help us respond to this. This was a thing 10 years ago, and it was a thing for about 5 years, and it never really kind of got into our buildings, we didn't think, at Arrowhead. And for some reason, we're seeing a significant increase this year. It's dominating a lot of our time. We are not able to change the behavior. We've tried some things. We've worked with a lot of our students. We worked with some of our families. You can see 10 violations at this point last year, 23 violations this year, and 100 hits, which means we have our vape sensors in about 30% of our bathrooms right now, only 30% of our bathrooms, and we've had 100 hits from the first day of school until now. That's averaging 2 per day, meaning students are using some sort of vaping device in those bathrooms. And so we don't even know what the impact is in our school because we don't have vape sensors in every bathroom, so they are using them in other bathrooms. And we do actually move the vape sensors at times when we know that there's a bathroom where the frequency has increased, or when administration or staff members walking in and believing that they're observing or smelling vape, we will move a sensor. So we're moving them around, but But that's a pretty significant issue that we're facing. We're facing it for a lot of reasons. One, just increased use in general from our students, increased sharing, which is weird and gross to us, and unique disposing. So you can see some of the examples of what they look like now. These companies are making vapes to look like highlighters. Those are vape devices up there. Highlighters, inhalers for asthma, they're making them look like that. Flash drives, they're making disposable ones, so the little color ones down there, those are really tiny. They're enough for a few hits, and then you throw them out. And what we're finding is our students are now throwing them in the toilets and flushing them. And our plumbing staff has had to pull some out of walls, get into the walls, open up the plumbing and pull out some vape devices because the students use them, empty the cartridge, and dispose of them in whatever way they can so that when they're brought into the office, they don't have them on persons. So, yeah.
So this is very alarming. So what is the disciplinary action of like the first incident, second incident of students?
Yeah, we have a tiered process, and we hit pretty hard. It's suspensions immediately. So we typically have a discipline process of conversations and detention, Saturday detention, those kind of things. We move immediately to suspensions with these, and it depends on the use. Depends on if the person was a distributor, meaning sharing with other students. So there's some variance in that, but suspension at the minimum for use.
Do they get like in terms of like athletics or?
Yeah, so every one of the students who receives a vaping violation, it meets with Mr. Mangan for athletic code violations as well. So it has not seemed to be a deterrent. And I want to kind of point out, I put the picture of Bender up there on purpose because I think that's what we think of when we think of vapors. That was the smoker back in the day, right? And it was, if you heard us, I was laughing at Sue sat over here and I got her permission to share the story because Sue caught her own daughter using a vape. Sue is a very competent, I've heard her have conversations. She's a great parent. She holds the line. She's competent. She's in our business. She understands what goes on in schools, and her daughter used. It is prevalent among all types of students. There is no pocket that we can look at of kids and say, these are our vapors, these are not our vapors. And most of the conversations we have, parents go, I had no idea, or it's not my kid. They told me it's not them. And so our parents are really getting an eye opener, and it's very hard for them to come to terms with many of our families that we meet with are great parents who have great kids who are caught in a situation where through peer pressure or just through social understandings that they want to fit in are using vape devices in our school now.
And they're getting addicted too. I think it's the other thing because one of the steps that you guys have taken, which has been great, is taking the cell phones of the kids so they can't meet up, really restricting our known users in terms of their movement throughout the building. And we're still at times getting hits on them on our single stall usage when we know they're using alone. So they're not doing it then to be cool. They're doing it because they feel like they need to use a vape throughout the day. And I think that's become one of the more alarming pieces as well, is that we're finding like, why do they keep doing
single
this?
use? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's very alarming is the South Campus, where the numbers for North Campus stay the same, but you go from 4 times as much.
We've only been in school 45 days. Yep. 23 violations. Violations mean that we've caught them, right?
Yeah.
That's the significance. That's a lot of time every time we do that because vape sensor goes off, we review cameras, we find out who could be a part of it, we pull in those students and we search them, and typically it's a group. We have gotten to the point where we have several individuals, but it's a group, and so we're having to search through a group, and usually in the group it's one person who holds it for the rest, and they all know they kind of take turns. And so they are making it a very difficult piece for us to enforce, which is why I want this to be public. We want to have our families involved in this so that they're aware to have conversations. I was sitting with my PTO and they're saying, we kind of think our kids are doing it, but we don't know what to do about it, right? Like, we don't know if they are. We know they probably have friends that do, and that's kind of the conversation and how it starts, and it's an awkward piece for our families to go through as well, which is why, so we actually started kind of a team to address this. So myself, Mr. Bolt, our deputy, our SRO, Deputy Dunker, Ms. Bradowski, and Ms. Gordon all met. We started to kind of create a plan of all different ways to approach this. It's a school epidemic of sorts, but so we started with messaging to our families. We did have a pretty significant piece in our most recent newsletter, which we shared with our families that we have vape sensors in our school. We tell our students that we have 8 sensors in our school. And so our goal isn't to catch kids, it's to change the behavior. So if we can change the behavior, we're winning. We're on the right side of this. We want what's best for our kids. We want what's best for their health. So we're trying to be as upfront as possible, sharing information with our parents. We've had increased presence by our staff in the halls and in the bathrooms. That's a very uncomfortable step for our staff, and we're proud of the steps. We've had staff who have walked into bathrooms knowing that they're going to walk into an issue that they're taking on, and they brought that issue to our attention. We appreciate their help because truly there's 3 building administrators and we can't cover the thousands of square feet that we have on our own. So the support from our staff has been huge. We are increasing our disciplinary response. We're talking about putting, to your point, Daryl, a more formal structure in it and sharing it with families so that they're aware of what the response will be. We do have a structure right now. It's not having an impact. So that's why the conversation is still occurring on that piece. We're working on proactive measures of teaching in health class, looking at having a homeroom to speak to our students directly about it. And some of our students, we've had to limit our building privileges, are more repeat offenders, or especially those who have shared their devices with other students. That is our biggest struggle and where we've put the most of our attention, because it's one thing if you're buying as a student and you're putting yourself in that situation, but when you're putting other families' children in that situation, that's one we're really trying to focus on. So we do have a parent informational session we've offered tomorrow night right before conferences. We tied it to conferences in hopes of some better attendance. We'll talk about what we're experiencing, what we do as an admin team. Ms. Fredowski is going to lead a piece on how to search a student's backpack, how to search a bedroom, those kind of things, and talk about resources that parents have to go through that. So we're trying to help parents have a very difficult conversation through those pieces.
Can I just ask a question? You know, since the South Campus seems to have a higher number of kids who do this, does that mean like from the middle schools, they're coming, you know, starting in 7th and 8th or whatever? Are you talking to the middle school?
We haven't talked to the middle school yet. That's a point that we've considered is what are they seeing? And we know that we had heard last year and experienced and had conversations because the students were coming to us, an uptick in the middle schools. So maybe if we can find some pieces that are actually can have an impact in term behaviors, and maybe we can share and work together. But we definitely should reach out to them and kind of see if they're seeing the same things we are, because it is a heavy freshman piece right now.
Adam, is there also an effort during the initial freshman orientation?
Wings?
Wings.
It's a big piece of wings. Yeah, it already is. And which is why our communication with our students hasn't had an impact. We're seeing repeat users. We're seeing students who got the message. It's become such a, to Adam's point, an addiction for some, but such a strong social connection for some of our students, and peer pressure connection, and just simply fitting in. It's become a new piece of that here. The conversations that we're having on the front end they're not changing behavior.
So I think what you're going to do with the kind of informal session tomorrow, I think that's great. That's spot on. I think if possible, add that to the orientation that the parents participate in for the next freshman year as well.
Yep.
My son being a freshman, from the school that he came from into here, I would say, yeah, it came in through what's currently seen in middle schools.
Yeah.
At least from the school that he came from. It's very, very prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe a little bit more of the sensors, how they work, and what would it take to get sensors in 100% of the bathrooms?
Yeah, we've talked about that. The sensors are essentially 99.9% accurate. They're extremely accurate. We've tested all sorts of things in it. We've tested colognes, sprays, all sorts of pieces that have been used as excuses, right? When we catch a student, I think I put some of them out there. Yeah. So this is what I sent to families. It wasn't mine. I was holding it for a friend. It's there, but it was there, but I didn't use it, or I was there, but I didn't use it. It's my first time, and I only did it because of my friends, right? So that's the first thing, and that's human nature. We get it. Kids put in that spot, they're not going to be honest with us, and we get that. We understand that, and that's why our conversations typically take a lot longer. Every one of these is hours upon hours of time for our staff to really get down to the truth, because those are the first comments that we always get. And it's really tough to go from there to then have the same conversation with parents who, no, my kid wouldn't do this, right? And sometimes they're right, and their kid wouldn't and was put in a situation, but again, 99% of the time, when they're in the bathroom by themselves and the vape sensor goes off, when you finally get down to it, that student used it. So we have them in, like I said, about 30%. It's about I think we worked through it, about a $30,000 total expense to put all of vape sensors in every bathroom of ours. We've talked to Jeff, looking at unique budgets. We have a counselor right now looking at grants to help support the funding. Jeff said he can probably work it into to our budget and on maybe like a 3-year rollout plan. That's kind of a big chunk for our budget right now. So there may be other sources that we can get funding from, and we'll consider that.
So even if a sensor goes off, you're not really there to catch anybody though, right?
We're notified immediately, so it's an email immediately to the admin team, and then our two main administrators and our SRO get a text to their phone. But by the time they get it, and if they're not engaged in something, to get down there they're almost never going to get down there in time. So that's where the time comes in, right? It's an hour later, they're looking at it, they go back on the cameras, they pull the students in, that kind of thing. So it's a significant chunk of time for our staff right now.
Is this unique to Arrowhead or other high schools?
What? Other high schools experienced it, I think, 5 to 10 years ago. A lot of, I don't know why it's becoming so prevalent here. And like we said, maybe it is just a culture that has slid through our community at a younger age and is now coming up to the high school. We don't really know. Most of the buildings I've been a part of, we were dealing with this 10 years ago, and we were able to work with students, work with families, and kind of catch it before it became a big deal. But
We dealt with it 10 years ago too, before you got here. It wasn't at this level though, and our freshman class, it's clear.
yeah, I reached out to some of my colleagues at other schools who aren't having the same rate that we're seeing.
There hasn't been an uptick elsewhere.
Not elsewhere right now, no.
In 2019, the Journal Sentinel had an article about it was an epidemic, and just within the last couple of weeks, there was an article in the Journal Sentinel that said vaping is down.
Yeah.
Not here.
Ethan, you subscribe that maybe to some of the new shapes and ways to try to get around it, or is it, is there any thoughts on?
Yeah, there are ebbs and flows, and there are unique characteristics to every class that comes through. And right now, I think we have a freshman class that subscribes highly to how they're perceived by their peers. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think that has driven addiction through some students, or just insecurities and other, where it's become a more prevalent part of their social networking piece. That's what we're seeing. Again, we're only 2 months in. From our limited conversations, we're seeing it be more of that than anything else.
Compared to past years, are you seeing any significant uptick in drug use?
No, and we thought we would, because we have seen some of the use of what's considered the legal. It's not legal for students, but it's the Delta 8 and Delta 9, which you can purchase at a gas station, has such a low amount of THC that it's sold publicly in Wisconsin. We've had some of that, but that's not, that rate I don't believe has increased. It's been pretty consistent over the years. So this is it's a unique. I mean, sometimes we have vape cartridges that don't even have nicotine. They're just using a vape device, and that's where we think it's more of a peer pressure social piece. But the majority have nicotine. Some are empty, and some have the deltas or the THCs. But those rates have pretty much stayed consistent, where the just use of vapes and nicotine have really increased.
Consequences include driving privilege.
They can. So we can go any route. Now, our north building has, even though it's increased, it's not to the level of our south building. So driving privileges at our south building are pretty minimal. But we have addressed other pieces, removing the ability to be in the halls or use the bathrooms. We have students who come into our office to use our office bathrooms so we can monitor them. We've taken away the ability to be at sporting events for some, if we don't believe that we can trust them, especially those who have distributed, because we don't want them sharing with other students.
So other than using the opportunity to speak to the community, what help do you need from the board?
My guess is that as this continues throughout the year, the board will hear. They'll hear that the administration is responding to aggressively, or that their student wasn't a user and they were told that they were, those sort of things. So I just want to make the board aware for when those pieces come your way. I don't know that there's anything right now in the immediate that support that we can identify. I believe just because of the nature of this and the frequency that we're seeing, that at some point it'll be a bigger discussion. All right, I'll pass it over to Mr. Bolt. Thanks to the board.
Thank you for letting us know about this. We
Sure.
really appreciate it. And also just a quick thank you as well to administration and the staff for so diligently administering the cell phone
Sure,
policy.
absolutely.
We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks.
One last thing before we sit down. I love Warhawk Rise. Whoever had that idea, phenomenal. Got him on the
I
back.
stole it. Yeah, I stole it. It was stolen from a program at Cedarburg that was sponsored by a great man. His name is Jim Kazmarek. He owns Capco, part owner of the Bucks. So he had all the resources in the world. He was an HS alum, but he owns the largest metal manufacturing company in the nation, and he got D's in all his classes at Arrowhead, right? So he talked about how he got his life straightened out. And he was always the speaker and really treated the students well. And that's kind of the pause, is he was such a good face for that program because he could tell his story. And he told the students, every student at that piece, he said, if you want a job, you come to Capco and I'll give you a job. It doesn't matter if we have one or not, I'll give you one. Right, so those kind of messages. And so we're working with a company similar, Arrowhead grads, the family is, who own a very successful company now, who have wanted to get back into our school to support. And they have a lot of their employees who they hire potential and kind of purpose-driven people rather than academically successful. So they're proud to partner with us in this. But yeah, it's definitely something we stole. So
It's awesome.
but it's an awesome program. Yeah.
Yeah, great job. Sure.
All right, and when we mapped out our superintendent reports back in September, this was the only thing on the agenda. So as the night gets long here, it was not intended to be this way. But we talked about what we wanted to look at throughout the year, and with Conrad coming on board, we talked about our special education post-secondary outcomes and how they continue to be at a high rate. And with our numbers, we want to explain a little bit about how we got there. So when you look at the blue bars are the last 5 years, left side being 5 years ago, right side blue bars being most recent from this last year. These are the post-secondary outcomes of our graduating classes 1 year after they graduated from Arrowhead. So they get the entire year. We make phone calls to all the families. And we deliver a survey. One audience member was part of that, and it was a lovely conversation. I was very excited to talk to them about how well their student was, or former student was doing. And from these surveys, again, we get the data here. We have over an 80% response rate every year that we do this. So the data that we do look at is valid. The ones that we don't return our phone calls, moved, or we can drum them up somehow, but we do put in 3 to 4 phone calls to each family to try to get response rate. Far left stack is those that go into higher education. The red bar is the state of Wisconsin average, right? So Arrowhead average in blue, state of Wisconsin average in red. You can see we're well above the state average there. The middle group is where we look at either higher education or competitive employment. So competitive employment is making above minimum wage on a job site and working over 20 hours on that job. The far right column then is when you add in higher education, competitive employment in the community, or other education and training. So really at that point, the only people that we're excluding are the people that are doing nothing, right? The people that are at home in mom and dad's basement or home and aren't engaging in any kind of education or competitive employment. We have targeted through this survey, and we're going to talk a little bit about it coming up in our program. And I want to introduce you to somebody in our community who is going to, their company is going to help us out with this. 2 categories fall into the students that are non-engagers really. One is our incarcerated population who become incarcerated after high school. Over the last 3 years, I think we've averaged about one a year. It's not always one a year. It's on average, it'd be about less than one a year, but we do sometimes have somebody that is incarcerated afterwards. But then the largest population of that are our students with more severe and profound needs. And again, we have a community service provider who we're renewing partnerships with to help us with that. Looking at how do we get here, one of the biggest starting points too, we have in the audience Kylie Seward, who is one of our special education teachers, new to us this year, and working with our students who we set up vocational training with throughout the day. And I'm not as talented as Adam with this, but I did cut a short video to demonstrate how we set up programming so that we can achieve these numbers. And so a cafe is very rote, very memorized, like they're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Hey, Caleb.
I want the drawing.
Caleb has my drink order memorized for me. Yep. Hey, Jane. Sure, I'll take a chocolate chip. So kind of hard to understand him there. Our speech and language pathologist will work with him on getting louder and getting more clear in their time with speech and language. And then he'll get to keep practicing the skill every day throughout the experience. Yeah, I'll take a Cheetos. He's going to wrestle for us this year on the Arrowhead wrestling team. Exactly. Hey, Reese.
Oh, what did you got today?
I had a LaCroix, a cookie, and a Cheetos.
Okay.
Last year, we updated our cash registers to be the square system, which is much more like what the students will experience when they're out on the job working on the point of sale system.
What's the name? Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, $2. You're just gonna.
You got all that, $18.
What's that?
You got all that.
Prices are low. I got news for you later. You'll be able to come on in and purchase.
Got this one.
Thank you. No, thank you. Have a good one.
And also, enjoy your lunch.
Our freshman class might be full of vapors, but our freshman class at Working Cafe are very talented coming in. It's been really nice to see. When we go to the coffee shop, then it's a little bit more varied, and the skill level has to be higher to deal with the different levels of drinks that they get. Then we do internships in the community. This is out at a work placement, and then we have a job coach working with this student on how to do the different jobs. Journey 21 is our newest partner this year. So this is one of their work sites that they're at. GPS, so this student goes to Generac for school for half the day and then works at Generac for the other half of the day being paid to work. Starting out as a materials handler, and then he'll upgrade into actually making parts here. I want to go back here. All right, and so this is our manufacturing experience that we just launched last year. And the cool thing about this is that this was not a planned piece. The student on the right is going to start on Monday at Bradley Corp out in Menominee Falls. The person on the left, his name is Gabe. And Gabe was one of our first students last year to get a job there. As we were touring Jordan through the facility, Gabe was there, and then Gabe actually was able to give him a little bit of insight and training on the job that he would be doing. So we have one of our success stories then training the next success story that we're going to have at Bradley. And I could have been done for the year at that point. I was like, this is awesome. And I was making sure that I could get a picture of that exchange happening. So that's a little bit of how we get there throughout the day. Again, these, and I think I've talked about it in other meetings, the opportunities like that are not, they're not cheap. We do have to invest a lot of money to get there. When we talked about the surveys that happened on the first slide, when we do those surveys, we actually get money from the state of Wisconsin for every survey that we complete. So last year we got $23,000 for engaging in those surveys. This past year, or for next year, we'll get $28,000 for engaging in those surveys. That money goes directly back into these opportunities that we've set up for students. So we're using that to pay for tuition to GPS, to pay for things like Project Search, Journey 21, because, and like the transportation cost money, there's a lot of costs to get there. But as I talked with my colleagues around the state, I always try to impart to them, like, nothing that we do matters if we drop the baton and the handoff to the adult world. And so this is the best place that we can really be putting our money, and that large sum of money as a special education unit, because that's the transition that matters the most. Tim Langer has helped set up a scholarship fund, which we contribute to every year. That money helps to go to these experiences. We're going to partner with the Arrowhead Scholarship Fund to get that on their docket now, so that more people will have awareness of that. So go to that event. You don't have to win the item, you just have to bid up the item. When we do our lobster boil, that money goes back into certain things like Cafe Arrowhead at school, but then also these kinds of opportunities that helps promote as well. Again, you don't have to win the item, you just have to bid up the item when we're there. So that's how we get through. Any questions on kind of like the school component for myself or Kylie before I get to community pieces?
Just not to put Kylie on the spot, but anything that you'd like to share about your experience so far?
Sure. So do you want me to stand up? I've actually never been to a board meeting before, so thanks for having me. So I actually had the privilege of working at Arrowhead as a special education parent educator, finished school and was hired back as a special education teacher. And now everybody on the admin team is guiding me through my educational administration degree for my master's degree. That being said, Arrowhead and working with these students, I have never felt more at home being at Arrowhead. I love these students. I love walking in every day, getting the good mornings, getting the hugs, the high fives, even some of those grumpy mornings. It's fun to be there to work through that with my students. I have a grade school teacher who has taught me a lot, and I liked the aspect of Cafe Arrowhead and being able to work in the coffee shop and getting out into the community to set students up for success, because the part that hurts my heart is knowing that sometimes students are not going to have somewhere to go once they graduate high school. Knowing that high school is sometimes students' safe place to go with adults that they trust, and knowing that they are loved here. And I want our students, when they leave us, to continue to be successful and as independent as possible. I think that Cafe Arrowhead and Coffee Shop is just one of the many ways that we set them up for success, along with some of those community exposures that we are getting out and doing some of that. The more the better.
And Kylie hit the ground running too. We came in, we talked about our reading initiative shortly after she was hired, and Kylie interjected a different reading tool into our functional academic classes as she learned about what our needs were and where we were finding our weaknesses. So with our students with intellectual disabilities, moderate to severe autism, we've changed up, thanks to Kylie, the way that we instruct those students in order for them to comprehend better what it is they're reading and learning about through a very structured system that they work with. So it's been great. Yes.
Thank you guys.
And then the last part of our presentation is I want to introduce Eric Martin. Eric has worked with Pantheon Industries for as long as I think I've been at Arrowhead. I don't know how many years ago it was, and Eric will be able to answer this question. They moved right into our backyard, so they used to be over in the Oconomowoc Industrial Park near Target. they moved to, and I put it on the map up here, if you can't see it that well, that's at the corner of Highway C and K, kind of across the street from the Stone Bank Farmers Market. And what Pantheon Industries does is it works with our students that are transitioning to adulthood that may not be ready yet for like what we call that competitive community employment, but through his site and his facility helps train those students. So Eric, if you want to talk a little bit about what you do and how you serve that population, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you, Adam. Thank you guys for having me out. Yeah, so it's 20 years. So I started at 14. So then I've been with Pantheon. I've been executive director for the last almost 4 years now. The previous one stepped into a lateral position in January 2020. So some really good foresight on his part to get out of the way just in time and let me take over right before all the fun happened then. So Adam, I think we've been working almost a decade, if not more now. And actually, I started working with Arrowhead in the transition program back when John Howe was first starting some of these really cool initiatives and Job Olympics and the lobster boils. And my previous role, I was a voc evaluator, so I was working with the transition students. I probably sat in over 100 IEPs here and at North Campus. And my son goes to school here, and then my younger child will in a few years. So very much ingrained in this community. I live a mile from where I work, so it's a nice commute. So yeah, always excited. We used to have a lot of partnerships with Arrowhead, and then some legislative things came in. And we're talking just a little bit about, at Pantheon, we provide work services to individuals with disabilities. And we do that across a full spectrum of individuals and a full spectrum of outcomes. So we work with individuals who have significant challenging behaviors and disabilities that really hope to work in the community, and right now that may not be the best choice, to individuals who working with DVR and getting jobs in the community is the outcome, and we're the largest DVR provider in Waukesha County. We're working with about 500 individuals with disabilities in Waukesha County every year across, again, community employment, center-based employment. And some of the areas that Adam asked me to talk about is a couple of years ago, individuals could transition directly into programs like ours, and we run programs that pay people commensurate wages for pre-vocational training, meaning they're going to come in, they're going to get to work on different job skills with a level of support, medical care, oversight that allows them to work safely and effectively and build those skills. And those are environments that are not impossible to find in the community, but if we're being honest, very challenging for a lot of those individuals to find. And we really provide that conduit to further growth. Some legislation passed. High school students aren't allowed to participate directly in those programs anymore or until they're age 24. So what happens, unfortunately, is a lot of individuals who have received the tremendous services that you guys are doing, building those skills, they hit 21, they age out of school, competitive employment doesn't happen, and then there's a gap. And a lot of times at that point, they're stuck at home, they're doing more habilitative or day-type activities, and they're not working. And as we know with anyone, we work so hard to develop a skill. If we don't use that skill and continue to hone it, it starts to fade. And so there's been some softening in the legislation where if we have individuals who have fallen into that group, there's a way and method that we can still get them into our program before they hit age 25. And we're going to talk about partnering with a few of the people that fall into that. One of the other ways that we can do it is building some of those day programs within our facility that then can tie into some of our community outings and eventually, as they qualify or age into, get them into the employment programs. We wrote for a grant last year to start a day and community-based day program that we did receive. We're in the process of building that out now, and hopefully in early spring that will allow for students to come in because they're not working, to do skills to pay the bills type curriculum, do job shadows out in the community. We have an independent living skills area and kitchen and apartment that we've built out. And then as well be exposed at the level that the law allows until we continue to move them into more appropriate work training and different opportunities. That's a lot.
You heard Eric talk about the law and Lynn in terms of finance and legislation. This is a piece that our state could improve on. There's a barrier to adults working in places like Pantheon, because the push has been a dreamer sort of approach to say, we believe that all these individuals should have community competitive employment. But Eric and I are dreamers ourselves, and we push what the envelope can be. We're also a heavy dose of realists. And the dirty secret that nobody wants to admit, people aren't hiring a lot of these people. Flat out, if we brought them to the businesses of the people that write this legislation, they're not going to hire them. All right. So we need to break down barriers so that they can be engaged, because the realities that we face and those gaps in those numbers are the ones where if they were able to work at a place like Pantheon straight away, they would be engaged and they would be doing stuff strictly before the age of 24.
Yes.
And so that's again. So Eric's working with us. We had a great meeting last spring. We talked about what our needs are, this exact population that we're talking about. How can we close the gaps in terms of their engagement after graduation? Pantheon was already ahead of that. They're responding to it based on the conversations we've had with a little bit more urgency. And so we just want to keep moving the ball there. But in terms of what the board can do, be aware of these pieces. Anybody that has more of the years of finance legislation, Cindy talked with Eric, 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Cindy Ducal talked with him 2 weeks ago. But anything we can do to reduce those barriers would be wonderful.
And just to clarify, a real common point, so anyone with a disability that wants to work in the community can apply to the Division of Vocational Rehab tomorrow and receive services to work in the community. Working at a program like ours is a choice, and no one is forced to make that choice. We feel, a lot of families feel that it's a very appropriate choice. A lot of individuals feel that it's an appropriate choice. We always want to maintain that choice. But then again, as Adam said, we want to get them to whatever level they aspire to be. We're just one more conduit to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Question, can you send out, so I'd like to see and read and understand that piece of legislation we're talking about? You probably don't unless you have a sleep disorder, at which point, but sure, yeah. And I can send you the particular section of it, because it was a federal legislation, and it's probably about 5,000 pages long. So it's federal, not state? So there's state interpretations so the Fed says this, but like a lot of things, it's very nebulous, and how the state chooses to interpret it really comes down to the State Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So without getting too in the weeds, if an individual tries to work in the community and fails, then they can maybe apply to a program like ours under the age of 24. But they don't define what attempting to work is, they don't define what failure is, and they don't define what the process is to make sure that, it's been blessed for them to come to our program. So that's where the state has oversight, and through one of the other organizations I'm a part of, we've been doing some pushing to get clarification to those points and finding the avenue to help families who truly have tried, have failed, and want to access what they feel is the most appropriate service, an avenue to doing that. And that's one of the areas that Pantheon's really been on the forefront in this region of trying to facilitate that. And we have started to have more success, as Adam and I talked about the other day.
But nobody knows that piece of legislation better than Erica. So
I would say let's meet off after SA by a different time. I do know a representative that did have a daughter or son with disabilities, and that's kind of a passion around there. It's not one of ours directly, but it might be interesting if we can get a couple different ears on the topic and hear some different perspectives.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't want to meet after the meeting tonight, Lynn?
Probably.
Okay.
I want to clear head so we can think about it strategically.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you, Eric, for coming in. Thank you, Kylie, as well for coming.
Nice job, Adam.
Oh, one more piece as we're transitioning. We did get approved for a light renovation in Cafe Arrowhead. So as we talked about renovating that space, with referendum talk coming, we're holding off a heavy renovation, but we met, and I think that we're going to get that done before second semester. which means that we can have that cafe open to students throughout the school day, which means more reps for our students within the cafe and more regular education students being able to work there, interact with our students as well too. So if we can get it underway for second semester, we will, but at least at the beginning of next year, we'll have that done.
Is there any further update on the Filter Farm money and where that stands?
We're waiting on a referendum because we don't want to spend the Filter Farm money and then have a referendum and be like, oh, well, we could have,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want to renovate
Yeah.
outside of a larger project.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Yep.
And then the last piece under the superintendent's report is relative to the CM.
Yep, discussion action approved construction management contract. Jeff couldn't be here this evening, but he did send out the information to everyone, so I hope you had a chance to review that. I put together a little memo for everybody to also review the information. We had a number of board members who participated in the interview process. So I don't know that I have to go through too much of the background. 6 original RFPs returned. We interviewed 3, and the interview team came to a consensus around the final recommendation for BGS to be awarded the contract. So we would ask the board to take action on that this evening. If you have questions, we're happy to answer.
Before the motion, is there are there any questions, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, then this is the motion that I'm looking for. Award BJS Construction Services the contract per the long-range facility study RFP, with the initial phase being $0 fee for the long-range facility planning. Do I have a motion to approve?
So is that a motion?
That is the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion?
May I say, Tim, that I appreciate every board member who was participating in that conversation and interview. Thank you for your time. Best of it.
Any global thing that you'd like to share, anybody would like to share about BJS?
We have a representative here, but we're just waiting for the vote. So if you wanted, that would be one way to get some great information. Jason Snyder's here.
Okay. In general, I mean, I think, we as a team being there, everyone had the opportunity to put a score to the criteria that you can see listed in the box. And it arose pretty unanimously with the team that was there that BGS checked all the boxes that we felt were really important. The interview itself was really exceptional. And I think, not to speak for the whole team, but it did seem overwhelming from the comments at the end of the evening that the sheer presence of BJS within the Arrowhead community will be an absolute asset as we work through the referendum process and construction.
Yeah, that's what did it for me, their connections to our community in our backyard. You guys have a lot of very good local connections, including yourself, that are passionate about this project, so we appreciate that.
Anything further? If not, I'll read this once again. All those in favor of awarding BJS Construction Services the contract for the long-range facility study RFP, with the initial phase being $0 fee for the long-range facility planning, say aye.
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 Opposed? I'm abstaining.
Thank you. Motion carries with 8 votes positive and 1 abstention.
And with that, I'll introduce Jason Schneider, who's representing BGS, and let him say a few words about some of those connections that they have to Arrowhead.
Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, board. Very excited. Thing like Brandon said, I'm actually one of those parents that are in this district. I have 3 daughters, 2 at Merton and 1 at Northlake. My Merton daughter, my oldest one, will be walking these halls next year, so we already are starting to talk about that, which is somewhat scary considering 13 years ago I never thought I'd be here yet. So just a little bit about BJS. We're located just down the road in Pewaukee. Our roots have been in this community. The J and BJS is Jorgensen, Craig Jorgensen. all 3 of his kids went through this school many years ago. So it's long tradition, definitely in this community. Been 75 years in business. We have about 250 employees, about 100 in the office, and then we have about 150 employees in the field, craft workers between carpenters, cement masons, and finishers and laborers. Like Charlie mentioned before, we have a long relationship with UA. We're working on 2 other projects right now together, actually with Charlie, with our teams are, but it goes back decades, and it's really been a collaborative approach since day one, and it continues through the years that we've all worked together, and ownership and management change. My role at the company, I'm vice president of construction there. I'm also an owner within the company. Overall, K-12 market is probably our top individual market. Just like UA, we work through 8 other markets, but K-12 and senior living are our largest 2 markets. So it's really been part of our DNA since 1947. So other than that, definitely very pumped, very excited to be working on this. Obviously, personally, our teams will be hounding Charlie already tomorrow for more information. Our senior estimator and Charlie have a very good relationship, so I'm sure she'll be calling him already tomorrow. So, but yeah, very excited. A lot of people in our company are also part of this district, and when they get this news, they will be just excited. So thank you once again. Open to any questions about BJS or anything about the process.
I wonder if you might just comment on your kind of collaboration with EUA in terms of community engagement. The representative you brought from your firm to the interview, I think, was quite impressive, and we're looking forward to all the help we can get on the referendum process. So if you have any comments on that, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, I won't say as well as Lindsay does, and unfortunately she couldn't be here tonight, but our director of marketing has been doing this for 18 years, has been with us for the last year. Our director of marketing actually retired after 32 years, so we were very lucky to get Lindsay, and she has been doing this in many districts and has been very successful over the last 10 years. I know Andy knows her. She's gonna be working really close with him. She's got a great support staff, but like she said in the interview, she's very lucky because there's so many people within BJS that are part of this community. So, I think her goal is to really get that message to not only us internally and how we message it, but to work with Andy's team to get it out to the broader thing. And you brought up the feeder schools before. How do you get it out to them? How do you get out to the younger families? How do you get out to the empty nesters, and how that message changes between us all is important. I've been in this community since 2006. I moved here, and why I moved here is obviously because of this school district. So it's very important that we continue that tradition, and I think it'll work good, and Lindsay and Andy's team will work awesome together. So.
Yeah, I can tell you from all my experience, we could not have a more motivated architectural firm or construction management firm. They're perfect fits for what we want to do, and they work super well together. So this is exciting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you
good
so
night.
much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next up on the agenda is communications and comments from members of the public.
We don't have anybody signed up.
Nobody signed up? Okay, then we will move right through that. Thanks, Kate. Into the consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening includes the October 11th, 2023 regular Board of Education minutes, the October 31st, 2023 special board meeting, the October bill list, the donations, acceptance of donations, and lastly, the resignations, retirements, contracts, and letters of appointment. There are a few kind of exceptional things in there contained in the agenda, consent agenda. So if anyone feels like they want to pull anything out specifically, comment.
This has become my habit.
Please feel free.
May I? Want to appreciate or express appreciation for those members of our community who have made donations to our school. The next 2 persons or organizations made contributions to Keep Love in Tennis, Ingrid and Gerhard Wenzel, as well as Heartland Kiwanis Club. And then to AHS Tech and Engineering, excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, Greeley Gear Company, and Integrity Wire Incorporated. So we thank you all for making those contributions.
I would like to just give some special recognition to an individual that's here that appears on the last on D on our contracts and letters of appointment. Mr. Bill King is here with us right now. I think some of you met him earlier. We appreciate our administrative team and going through all the interviews and bringing such a highly qualified candidate to Arrowhead. Just want to recognize his 20 years of management, facilities management service, certainly within the public realm as well as in other areas. In looking through his resume, it's very distinguished, and I couldn't help but notice that while he was in the employment of another employer, he reduced spending in his first year by $150,000 from the previous manager, and he was able to cut the overtime budget. And we very much appreciate your ability to do that. Knowing where we are with our budget right now, we appreciate your eyes on our budget moving forward as well. So I wanted to call out Bill King and make that introduction because that is the gentleman we'd look to approve this evening. Bill?
We're glad you're here, Bill.
Yep.
Congratulations.
So with that, is there anything else that people would like to comment on the consent agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I'll be going to a meeting tomorrow where the Human Resources for South Milwaukee will be there, a longtime colleague of mine, and she told me I have to watch my back. They're not happy about this.
Welcome, Bill.
I'm lucky to have you.
We'll start committee reports, and first up is curriculum with Chairperson Hummer.
Thank you, President Schubert. The first item up is discussion and action to approve the world language trip to Germany. This was something we talked about, I think, 2 curriculum committee meetings ago, but it didn't get on the agenda to vote on the last board meeting, so we're doing that tonight. So this is happening in June of 2024, and I guess we can just make a motion to approve.
I move that we approve that trip for world language to Germany.
I'll second.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The world language trip to Germany is approved.
And then we move on to the curriculum committee meeting from October 19th. At that meeting, we had Steve Melzer, Brenda King, and Julie Schwartz come in and make a presentation on the personal finance class. That will become a graduation requirement based on how we vote tonight. It's just going to be available to grades 10 through 12, 1 credit course. Kind of the recommendation was sometimes students aren't graduating with enough financial knowledge into the world of, simple things that a lot of people assume they know and they don't. So this course came up to help students be a little more aware of personal finance, and they wanted to make it a requirement for graduation. So that's where we're at with that, and we'll be voting on that later. And then Sue presented the schedule change management plan for reading. Do you want to go over that a little bit, Sue?
The reading or the schedule change management?
Probably both.
So also on the agenda this evening will be a discussion and action related to the block schedule with resource period. And so as a regular part of the curriculum committee meeting agenda, we will be reviewing where we are with certain change management processes, including communication, professional development, curriculum realignment, if the vote goes through this evening. So just wanted to make you all aware of the conversations that are taking place and the work that will be taking place. We want to make sure that that plan was well understood. And then in terms of reading professional learning, we had Professional Learning Day on October 26th, in which we had our reading specialist, Mona Zignego, presenting information to our faculty and ready time for them to ready that information and put into their curriculum in the afternoon. So I just continuously will have an update from the reading side of things as we focus on improving our reading achievement and growth.
And we also talked about redeveloping an English 11 course as required in scope and sequence in English.
Yeah, that proposal will be coming forward at the next meeting.
Yeah, so that's for a future agenda item. Coming up is a review of the course guide draft and the English 11 proposal. And then December, we're doing the math presentation. Some of the math department will be coming into our curriculum committee meeting to present how they teach the class, what types of things the students are learning, and how that is being taught.
They'll be reviewing the initial placement process for students coming into the high school. They'll be looking at scope and sequence, talking about potential changes.
Our next meeting date is November 16th, and then we move on to the discussion and action to approve the personal finance class proposal. Anyone want to make a motion?
I would emphatically make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Since I didn't get to make a motion or second it, I just want to third it, or I like to say that it's an excellent plan, and out of my own personal experience, I know that it's desperately needed out there, and I'm very pleased that we're doing this.
And I've had multiple parents reach out to me or see me in passing and thank the staff as well as the board for even bringing this into discussion, let alone hopefully we approve it. But as I talked to, they're just thrilled to make sure that their kids take this class.
I didn't hear anything negative about it. I had a few feedbacks, emails, and talking to people, and they were all excited and glad we're doing this. So.
Channel 58 was here today interviewing. I've never in all my 25 years, I've had so many inquiries from media on anything we've done. So I don't know what that says about the state of the world, but I think it is a positive thing for graduates. It definitely aligns with our mission and vision. Janet Dene is here in the audience from the department as well. She was interviewed on the spot and did an awesome job. Our kids got to be on, not their faces, but images of Arrowhead were on camera today too as well. So channel 58 at 4:30.
Wow, that's good. Okay, so good. Yeah. Okay. Oh.
Yeah, not hearing any need for a lot of additional discussion. Everyone's pretty overwhelmingly supportive here, but all the same, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries to approve the personal finance class.
Thank you.
Next up is Chairperson Evers and Vogeltons with finance and legislation.
Sure, I'll get us started. So we had a meeting on October 20th, well-attended meeting, especially for finance and legislation. So thank you for everyone who was in attendance. We started off with Mr. Gross providing us the preview to the final budget, and Jeff did a nice job walking us through all of that, which then we took action on at the special board meeting on Halloween. After that, Mr. Gross spent a lot of time walking us through a proposal that is currently routing through the village of Heartland related to approving a TID or TIP as it relates to some potential sale and development of a property within our district. So I know that portion of that meeting was extremely informative, especially for me, not having any experience with TID or TIF prior to that discussion, which the purpose of that essentially is Arrowhead has a vote within that process. And the person who votes on our behalf is Mr. Gross, but we have to essentially tell Mr. Gross on how to vote on behalf of the district. There's a lot of discussion in there. I know there's been a lot of detail put forth through our communication, our email, as to all the details behind that. But the next step, after we get through the rest of the meeting agenda that we had, we'll discuss that with potential action. Following that discussion, I'll let Ms. Vogeltans provide an update for what she shared related to an updated equity and funding and any other possibly related topic.
Yep, so equity and funding is continuing outreach to the various schools. I actually just got an email today saying that they're going to be targeting the schools that are in the bottom 10% of school funding from the state to try to get more membership around that area. So they are continuing to be active. Most of their communication is going out to the administrations at the school, and they're choosing to go through mailers right now is the last update I got on that. And then just quickly, I went through last time what WASB has been bringing to our attention with different legislation efforts that are coming onto the docket at the state level.
Perfect, thank you. And then continuing on through that same meeting on the 20th, Mr. Gross provided us an update on the current status of EUA. Essentially, that is all now old news after we heard the presentation tonight. So that is the latest update. So I'll reference that, as well as we spent some time talking about, and you heard it from me in here a month ago, that the FNL committee was going to essentially sponsor sub-teams in support of the next steps moving forward from a referendum planning and work, and how do we get engaged to support the architectural firm as well as the CM group. So we're going to tweak that a bit, potentially pause just a piece of that until that work gets more moving. But the real point to share is members of this board, and I think I can speak for the board, if not correct me if I'm wrong, but we're very much ready to get engaged when you're ready for us to be engaged. So we don't want to jump the gun, but there are many of us ready to support as well as be a part of that planning, but we certainly do not want to duplicate or complicate efforts there. So we're going to pause on that. We'll discuss it more in the next FNL meeting that will be coming up on November 17th. Then we adjourned shortly after 8 o'clock. And then that leads us into the discussion and action on the Village of Heartland TID and TIF board recommendation for the Arrowhead Union High School vote. So I'll, I guess, pause for a minute just to see if everyone had a chance to read through what Mr. Gross has sent out. If there's any discussion before a motion. I'm not sure I am best equipped to answer questions as it relates to that. I would just defer back to that document, as well as Jeff provided kind of some scenarios as we walk through. Mr. Linger had a good suggestion and strategy on how to actually showcase some of that, which Mr. Gross provided in a file for us to review.
Yeah, maybe if I might offer a comment on this. So TIFs are one of those things that can do spectacular good, and sometimes can be a way to waste public money. And I always like to be on the right side of that analysis. And so I was appreciative of Jeff kind of running through our numbers as to what our likely tax burden would be for approving this. Now, the tax burden is there's a counterweight to that, and that we're putting taxable residential property on the tax rolls 30 years from now, but still ultimately arriving. And it's, in my assessment, the nominal cost. You have $750,000 house. It's a $10 hit per year. The question is, in my mind, when we're agreeing to spend our voters' money on this stuff, is are we getting something with public money that private money couldn't pay for itself? And I had a long conversation with our county board chairman this afternoon, and he is not a easy vote in favor of a TIF under any circumstances. And he advised me, they had a long talk with Jim Seepman, who has advised our board in the sale of the farm, and also happens to be the chair of the Park and Planning Department of our committee at the county, and tells me that Jim came back and says it's a good thing that he's looking at turning a quarry into, you know, spectacular housing, and that is a great thing for the community, and that it would never happen without a TIF. And I guess I agree. But cost is not extravagant, and we get something in our community that would otherwise remain a hole in the ground until government eventually spent money. Anyhow. So I guess I would, with that, make a motion that we approve the direct Jeff to vote in favor of the TIF.
I'll second. Is there any further discussion on this? I just wanted to say that I took a drive and I looked at that quarry. I never even knew a quarry existed there, but you did. You said you used to. But it was amazing. It's huge, and I never even knew it existed. But just wanted to say I saw it.
I think it's a significant need in our community. I've thought this for a long time, for more affordable housing units to be in this community, for young people, young couples, young families to be able to afford to live here. And to the extent that this will encourage that, I think it's great.
So I didn't understand this as affordable housing necessarily. They're going to be $1,800 to $3,200 a month. So they're not necessarily, from what I understand, to be affordable housing, but it is going to be great development.
Well, okay. Yeah. I just look at some of the massive homes that are being built around here, and I guess I'm looking at that and I'm comparing in that respect.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table in a second to direct Mr. Gross for a positive, favorable vote on the Village of Heartland TID TIF board. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Or aye.
I'm sorry?
I'm opposed.
You are opposed. Okay, we have 8 in favor and 1 in opposition. The motion carries.
Getting back then to updates, I think I covered it already, but our next meeting will be on November 17th, next Friday. That is all, unless you have anything else.
Nope. Thank you very much. Next up is Chairperson Beneker with Building and Grounds.
We did not meet on the first Thursday of this month, so nothing new to report. Our next meeting, just a minor typo here, it will be on Thursday, November 30th, not December 7th. That's 6:45.
Okay, thank you. To Chairperson Laner, personnel.
So we're to the end of the quiet season and personnel. There will be a meeting on November 29th, I believe. Conrad and I had a little talk about the schedule that's coming up. You know, it's visited. It visits the personnel committee before hitting the full board. We also have a few cleanup items that weren't worth scheduling a whole meeting for on their own, but we'll wind up with a half dozen items on our agenda for the 29th. Try and get everybody out of there by 8 o'clock.
Thank you so much. Last under committees is policy with Chairperson Harris.
Thank you, Madam President. We had our most recent policy meeting on October 25th. We basically had 2 items to discuss. The first one was brought forth from our superintendent, Mr. Farner, with regards to looking at a more efficient and better equipped potential for policy making in the future with Neola. We had pretty robust discussion about what that will look like, noting that we will have an expert coming into our next policy meeting to actually discuss it further so we can continue down that path. We thought as a group that it was a good idea, so we are moving forward to that. That is going to be the next meeting. We also discussed the idea for secondary legal counsel. The overarching thought there was that we currently do use WASB a great deal, and if needed, we do have the ability to reach out to a TOLIS. However, the overarching thought that by the group was that it is a good idea to have secondary legal counsel, and noting that there's a lot on the plate right now, not with just administration, but entirely in the school. We're going to be looking at a future RFP when time and considerations permit for that. Probably no specific date slated yet for that. Our next meeting is on the 21st of November, and we will be discussing more about Neola and having a Neola rep come in and give us the visuals and understand that better.
Thank you, Chairperson Harris. Moving on to other reports.
Excuse me. I'm a little confused about the date.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Is that the right date on there?
Yeah, that's.
I think I was told that it was that date, but it was changed and recently.
Yeah, together 15.
That was the 15th.
Because there's 3 days in a row.
It is.
Okay,
Thanks
yeah,
for that clarification.
great. Thank you. Yeah, it is the 15th.
15.
Yeah, that'll be a
Yeah.
tired
Trifecta.
weekend on Saturday.
It says the 15th on mine.
Just to. Okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Member Thompson. Appreciate that. Moving on to other reports. WASB. I just wanted to kind of walk through the Policy and Resolutions Committee most recent meeting and how that will impact some discussion with our December board meeting. Last weekend, Friday, Saturday, was kind of a double meeting with WASB. It started on Friday with the Policy and Resolutions Committee meeting itself. It was a second in their trifecta. The first had been in September, whereby all of the resolutions that are collected throughout the state are brought to WASB, provided to the Policy and Resolutions Committee to discuss, break into small groups, and advance or reject any of the resolutions that are there. And then as of this past Friday, all of those advanced resolutions were brought before the committee to kind of work through language and take a final vote as to whether or not they would again be advanced to the full assembly of WASB at the state convention in January. So there is kind of a full book of different resolutions that were advanced. It was an interesting process and interesting even from the perspective to see what resolutions were proposed and by whom, and how the voting fell within that committee. So I won't go into anything real specific in terms of what resolutions were advanced right now. However, at the December meeting, we will spend a little time on them. We'll get them in advance. I think it's an important process. It's not, I don't believe, something that the board has ever really done too much of in the past. But acting as the delegate then in January, I would act on your behalf to vote on those WASB resolutions that you would be favorable of. And so it's really necessary that I get a feel for what the board would like that vote to look like. So anticipate that for December. The second half of the meeting really was the legislative conference on Saturday. There were a number of presentations. Overall, it was very worthwhile. One of them was with Representative Joel Kitchens, the Assembly Education Chair. Another presentation was on the declining enrollment and just demographics in all of Wisconsin schools. Another one was presented by a gentleman out of Marquette, the Marquette polling, taking a look at public opinion and public education. Another was on effective school board governance in an era of politicization. And lastly, some information was presented on the reading landscape within the state of Wisconsin. So all of the presentation slides, with the exception of the reading landscape, are available at the WASB website. If you check under the fall conference, it's actually kind of interesting information, probably nothing that you would be overtly surprised about, but good information there. So all the WASB members can pull it up at your leisure. Just want to make you aware that it's there. So that's it for WASB, and then anything member Evers with CSAP.
I will refer to Mr. Bender.
On my agenda, it says it.
Here we go.
Nothing new to report.
Okay. Okay, next up is new business. Discussion and action to approve the recommended AV block schedule starting with the 2024-25 school year. So I'll leave that to Sue. If there's anything further you want to present on that, we've had a great deal of presentation and
yeah, no, we have. We've met in July for a long workshop, and we met again in September, and we've had continued conversation at the committee level a bit. I think tonight's vote is conceptually voting for the resource and AV block. We do have some details within the minutes, passing times and lunch and things like that that may still be tweaked. So we'll update the board if it moves forward, if those need to change. So it's just conceptually moving forward at this time so that we can plan and prepare ahead of the school year. Okay, starting next year.
Question.
One of my, as we participated in the workshops, one of the things that I wrote on the card, and I apologize if I missed a piece of the presentation or a file, but one of the things I wanted to hear a little bit more about is just the change management side, not just change management on the administration and the teachers, but also change management on the students as well. So,
yeah, so
not that I'm looking for a big presentation right
yeah.
now, but if we could just kind of walk through that methodology, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I think from a communication standpoint first, we have not re-engaged with families or parents since last year. So the first will be letting them know of the change, the impending change, and then the opportunity to engage in understanding what that means. So I would anticipate several meetings, probably by grade level, at least with parents to start with, and then ways to get students. There'll have to be some homeroom time set aside for students. Those are extended third periods for us. For current students to understand the impact of the schedule, especially in December and January, ahead of when they're selecting classes. What does that mean for selecting classes for next year? And so as we review all those materials that go into course selection, that'll be an important part to engage our students to understand what the block schedule means for them. And there'll have to be ongoing efforts going into the start of the school year with students. A resource period requires that they understand what the structures are, what the expectations are, and how they're to utilize that time. And so we'll have to be doing a lot of information with students, especially at the start of the school year on what that looks like, because that's a fairly big change to the operations. I think those ongoing parental engagement, answering questions, I think really identifying any misconceptions related to the block schedule will be really important. We know from last year's survey information that we reviewed a lot last year, that there just was we had a hard time combating ahead of the vote, just misconceptions about the outcomes of what a block schedule would mean for achievement and growth. So hitting that hard, I've been throwing for Conrad today. I was like, and this. So a lot to review in terms of making sure like parents understand like what we've all reviewed and what we understand to be the benefits, and then just engaging and doing what we did last year too, answering questions as much as possible and having a lot of opportunities for parents to hear about or revisit the rationale, revisit the understanding of why we're moving in this direction. I understand that for faculty, and I think we all understand, for faculty and some parents and some students who last year were relieved, I think, in many respects, that perhaps we didn't move in that direction. We're going to need to re-engage them and help them understand the benefits from neutral to benefits. We really don't see tremendous drawbacks for opportunities for students. I spent until 11 o'clock last night pulling, just looking at the AP numbers, looking at how many students currently are enrolled in our 60-minute AP classes, how many classes they take, are they involved in FSO, how many of the 60-minute APs, looking through all the scenarios. So there's still a lot to work through, but again, as I pull back from that data work and as I communicate with everybody else, like I'm convinced that on the whole, like we're going to be able to accommodate those students as much as we're accommodating the students that really need our assistance. We really need more resources wrapped around them as part of the schedule change, part of the resource period. So I feel like we're trying to uncover every angle. And just helping people understand the rationale. And I think when people really understand the why and they see the what's it going to look like and how we're going to implement it. And I'm not going to guarantee 100% consensus, but I know that we can bring some shared vision to why this would be a good move in the direction for learners at Arrowhead.
And I know I heard it when I participated in the meeting, but I think it's important for the community that's here to hear it again. But if you could just cover real quick how this schedule change benefits the initiative to improve our reading. So you could just cover that.
So part of what we know is that we need to be focused on not assigning reading for homework and assuming students have the skills to do the reading for learning, that we need to pull reading back into our classroom as part of our explicit instruction in reading to prepare them for college career. It's challenging in a 40-minute class when you have content that does need to be knowledge and content and skills that you're teaching. In addition to those reading skills, we need to be able to utilize our time in class differently. The instructional minutes do grow a bit. I don't remember those numbers memorized anymore, but we know that the instructional minutes total will grow a little. It's not a lot because we have less passing time over the course of the year, but it's different use of time in the classroom where we can pull those reading skills across disciplines. We know that we have work in our English language arts department in particular, but we have taken on the reading focus to be a school-wide focus across all disciplines in our curriculum to focus as well, because there is discipline level literacy, important literacy that occurs with every subject area. And those strategies for understanding and comprehending reading in those different disciplines looks a little bit different. And so to focus on that, having that extended time to bring those skills forward, to be able to assess those skills, provide feedback to students, this is a way to do it.
As well as the resource period.
And the resource period will be huge.
Yeah, we don't have tier 2 is the educational language. We don't have a space or time dedicated to supporting students who need help outside of traditional instruction, traditional classrooms.
So to be able to have a time where we can dedicate resources, teachers, support to fill in those skill gaps with students on the smaller scales. It's going to have a significant impact. Teach a skill, do the skill, assess the skill. Teachers now, too, you can't underestimate this. Instead of having 2 40-minute prep periods, we'll have 1 80-minute prep period where they can really start to make some hay. We think of functional time within a classroom, there's also functional time within a prep room. Again, be able to assess that skill that they've done in class and it's not disjointed. Teachers can then assess all their students and individual students on which reading standards that the individual students, groups of students, or whole class are not meeting. And we can adjust the next time we meet to additional whole group instruction, small group instruction identified within the resource periods. The teacher will be able to say, Conrad, Tim, Craig, and Daryl, you're not getting this. Come on in Wednesday. I'm going to reteach the 4 of you this skill. Rest of the class has got it because I can read that through my assessment data. And now we move on with that. So the functional space and minutes that we gain from this are going to be allowing us to not have choppy instruction where we teach a skill 1 class period, we do the skill the next period, and then we turn back and talk about assessment the next period. We're going to be able to do that all in one.
Is it fair to say it's a schedule change is a direct enabler to improve, in this case, we're talking about reading, but to improve our reading performance?
Yes.
Not saying that it will, but it is what we need to enable that next step.
Achievement overall.
Yeah.
And I think I'll reiterate that tier 1, tier 2, those terms, this schedule change will improve tier 1 teaching, regular classroom teaching, because we're going to have more time, get deeper, more flexibility. And then that tier 2 for the kids that aren't getting it, you got that resource period. I don't know too many other changes you can make that address both those tiers as effectively as this will.
And then, so that resource period, I think you've talked about in the past, that could also be used for different ways. So that could be where you can message about vaping or different issues that you want to bring to the students as well, right?
Yeah, we've already talked. What our families and our board will see is we'll front load a lot of that next year. As your week 1, week 2, week 3, typically students aren't deep enough into learning to really know what they need help with yet. That's a great opportunity to hit those discussions on vaping, on academic improvement, on pretty much anything that we need to. So our families will see that period used pretty heavily early on, and that's intentional. And then as we get further into the year, that responsibility will be released to the students and the teachers.
As a teacher, I just wanted to share one thing real quick. I actually taught all skinnies last year, or last semester, and this semester I have all block. And just the comparison of where I'm at in my planning and what I've gotten to is even further. Just being in the block this semester, and I didn't really plan to be here to talk about that, but it is kind of a unique thing, but since I teach electives, that can happen with our schedule. So yeah, last semester it was unique that I had all, it never actually only had skinnies where I taught all 6 throughout the day. And then this year I have a rotate like what we should be going to, hopefully be going to. So just to reiterate that in my teaching practice, it's already evident here.
Thank you for offering that.
So I individually, I think that the thing that I was convinced on with all of our meetings and the full administration team is that there's going to be significant improvements in achievement going to this model, and as Conrad brought forth as well. I do think that we should look at this, however, as a results-driven approach with the potential for the board to review results in maybe a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year time frame to know that, hey, we are moving forward. Things are getting better. Our achievements are going, are going up. Our reading skills and our reading scores are going up. Math skill, all across the board. So that's the one caveat that I'd like to, and I don't know if that could be a part of the proposal, but it'd be nice to have that as something that's more measurable.
Absolutely. I know that as Conrad and I and the administrative team have talked about our value-added data and the data associated with our growth as a school, not just achievement, but growth. we're really targeted on looking at those growth measures carefully, are being able to articulate ways we know that we can, through this change, can impact that growth. Because we're concerned about where students are at right now, and I think reviewing those identified data points on a regular basis is a good way to know if change is impacting students the way we hope to have.
Yeah, and I think that'd also be something that the community and parents would be excited to see and excited to know. Yeah, that sounds great.
I would just like to say, regardless of what the voting outcome is, like I want to thank Sue. I don't think we could have asked for a greater champion of something, bringing this forward.
Team effort.
I understand it's a team effort, but clearly the amount of time that she put into this, the amount of new material that you've even brought forward that you thought would be helpful to the board in light of past voting on this, and quite frankly, your level of patience has really been outstanding. I want to thank you for that.
I'd like to thank you too, though, piggyback on what you said. It was really a good education. I mean, those workshops and everything, all my questions were answered, and unfortunately that didn't happen before the initial vote, but at least we took the time and we went through it and broke everything down and explained and explained and explained till we could explain no more. But I really appreciate all the work you did and added to get to this point.
I guess I have a similar comment in that I was hoping to compliment my fellow board members and their curiosity and willingness to remain open-minded, even on things that we've taken public votes on in the past, and to reassess and reevaluate. I think that was only possible because Sue didn't become frustrated to the point where she couldn't move forward. She picked a new path and took a different, more, I think, creative approach to educating the board, and I just feel like it was an excellent model on how to function as a board and interact with excellent guidance from administration.
And I don't look at it as a year lost necessarily. I think this has been positive, and I think assuming that the way the vote goes, and I think it will, I think the support behind it will be significantly higher than it would have been a year ago. So I think looking back, I think the net outcomes. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think the summer and fall session, especially with like the representatives of each of the departments, where that would really, because I was one that was against it last year, but just hearing them sitting at the table with the department head of world language and math were my big ones, like how will this be pulled off, but just hearing from them firsthand too was a good aha moment. Like, okay, this makes sense, let's move forward. So thank you. And I mean, not just them, but everyone that was involved.
Just add my appreciation as well. Similar sentiments has been expressed here. And thank you folks for all your work. And for all of us who had questions, thank you for open-mindedness.
So given that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the recommended AV block schedule starting with the 2024-25 school year. Good. Any further discussion? Well, posterity's sake, we're going to do a roll call vote, starting with Member Everson.
Aye, there's a yes.
I think it's an aye.
Okay, aye.
Member Miller.
Aye.
Member Hemmer. Aye. Member Ferris.
Aye.
Member Vogeltoms.
Aye.
Member Benneker.
Aye.
Member Thompson.
Aye.
Member Langer.
Aye.
And this member Schubert is an aye. So motion carries. There's a lot more to do. Okay, future agenda items. Hearing none, pursuant to state statute 19.851C, I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor of being closed, say aye.
Can we discuss one thing first?
Oh, sorry.
One point of discussion. Oh, a lot of it in here because you moved too fast for the new business.
Sorry.
But as close as we are to Veterans Day, I don't know if there's any veterans in the house. But if yes, my appreciation to you as a veteran, thank you for your service to our country. If you have friends or family members, past family members or future family members or current family members currently serving, I thank them as well. So much appreciation to our veterans.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Being closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Go to the boardroom.
Can you give it?
I know, no, there's no rush. Judge,
Oh, okay.
no. There'll be a lot of
Okay.
fun coming up.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Boys.
Thank you very much. Thank you so
Well, how did you score?
Good. Didn't get a chance to call you back. I thought about it. No, sorry. No, you're ghosting. Ghosting. Yeah, because I was there.
But you told me, so that's okay.